Welcome back. Returning to the issue of rolling mass actions and the impact on businesses. Sir John Botha is the CEO of Global Business Solutions. He joins us now to speak to us about some of the effects and consequences, particularly on businesses and workers, that they bear in instances of protests and marches. He discusses with us the delicate balance between labour rights and corporate interests. A very good evening to you, Mr. Botha, and thank you very much for speaking to us. That was actually my first question, that the right to protest, association of expression, all of that is in the Bill of Rights and labour law as well. Some of the things that SAFTU are complaining about is to their affiliates rights of expression, of protest are being denied by employers. Why does this happen in this day and age?
Thank you for having me, and good evening to the viewers as well. As you correctly say, the Constitution of South Africa has got the right to freedom of association, and by virtue of that, to join trade unions and to participate in their lawful activities. And this particular matter has gone through NEDLAC, which makes it a protected form of industrial action. And what's very interesting is the fact that COSATU have also raised the same issues in stayaways earlier this year in July, as well as the 6th of October. And it focuses largely on dissatisfaction in respect of economic growth, unemployment, and in this instance with SAFTU around the privatization of potentially of Transnet, sluggish economy, geopolitical challenges, etc.
So I'm still trying to understand why employers resort to this kind of subjugation, because the denying of one's rights, particularly in a workplace, if, for instance, employees want to protest the fact that they are not paid, yet they are expected to come into the workplace. They are given below par wages, and yet they are expected to continue to work under those conditions, unsociable hours where double pay is not given, extra work overtime that is not paid, where let's even just talk about sanitary facilities not available, lack of water, etc. And when they want to exercise their constitutional right to protest about those issues because they have repeatedly raised them, but employers still want to deny them the right to protest, why are they allowed to get away with that?
Well, they shouldn't be allowed to get away with that. So trade unions need to take the necessary action, potentially to interdict, because the trade unions have followed in case of Section 77 protest action, and even in terms of the non-compliances that you've mentioned. I mean, that is in contravention of many laws, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Labour Relations Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. So employers who are in a contravention of that have no place in operating in the South African environment.
All right, so let's talk about the impacts of strikes, pickets on businesses, on industries. Often we're told they run into the hundreds of millions and billions in some instances, particularly if a strike is prolonged. But at the same time, you will hear companies who will go out publicly and say, this strike has had no impact on our operations or on our bottom line. So which one is it?
Well, I think it's a very difficult situation for workers, specifically because of the economic realities, fuel prices, food prices, and the like. We've also seen very low participation rates in many of the union organized activities around national stayaways. And the unfortunate reality is when employees do take strike action, that's no work, no pay. So they can't be dismissed because they have a constitutional right to strike. But at the same time, they are forfeiting the very, very wages that are a massive challenge in terms of a living wage. And that is the paradox that these unfortunate employees face. And if employers on top of that are contravening the law, it just exacerbates tensions, creates mistrust in organizations. And I think it's about time that business owners need to be leaders. They need to start caring more for their employees, given the environment. There are many managers, but we need more leaders in this business environment.
I'm just thinking, while entities have a right to safeguard their balance sheets, but as we talk about that delicate balance between labor rights and corporate interests, what does the law say? Because are you not surreptitiously, whether inadvertently or not, but I doubt that it is, denying someone their rights if you say no work, no pay? And I know this often more affects contract workers or and even in some cases permanent employees, but if they want to speak out and protest against the working conditions under which they're forced to work under, is it not a way of forcing them not to express when you say no work, no pay?
Well, the employment contract, as you know, is a reciprocal one, where employees offer their labor and their talent, and in return for that they get remunerated. So just in terms of law and contract, when they don't arrive for work, they forfeit those wages. But the unfortunate challenge we're facing is that the world in which we find ourselves now, especially post-COVID, especially given the geopolitical challenges, the high interest rates and inflation, employees are very, very hard pressed. And someone said to me the other day, John, many employees start the best part of their day when they arrive at work, because they've already just come from such challenging conditions, and when they're entering the workplace, for them it's part of the best day of their day. And that's the unfortunate issue. And of course the trade unions are pushing very hard at NEDLAC that companies should not be allowed to retrench or right-size or restructure purely to maximize profitability. They're arguing that many organizations are restructuring and reducing worker rights and maybe impacting employment purely to enhance profits. And I think that tension is a big issue right at this particular point in time.
And speaking of which, I mean, we've been speaking about the future of work for the past couple of years, and that is already upon us. As you say, post-COVID, we've seen the workplace change quite a lot, remote work becoming more and more acceptable or commonplace. Yet those who do work remotely also complain about added unofficial hours to their workplace, lack of boundaries in terms of when the workday begins and when it ends. So where's the law in writing that? Because it is an injustice that you're forced to work overtime, but it's not acknowledged and neither is it paid for.
You raise a very interesting issue, and it's a topic that I'm very passionate about. One of the things is in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, if you earn above 20,000 Rand a month, there's no limitation really on the amount of overtime hours that you work, and you don't get remunerated additionally. If you earn less than 20,000 Rand a month, then of course you are entitled to overtime pay at time and a half and Sunday pay at double time. But what I do know is that at NEDLAC, for example, they are currently busy looking at how labour law articulates with this new world of work. Because, for example, one of the things you mentioned is the right to disconnect. And unfortunately, the boundaries have been significantly blurred where we're always on. And I think a lot of organizations are starting to feel the impact of burnout, anxiety disorders, and mental unwellness. Of course, in South Africa in particular, there's a very high level of this. So the labor law is no doubt behind. I mean, if you look at the other angle of platform workers, you look at Checker 60, you look at Take a Lot, you take a look at Dash and all of these workers that deliver and potentially get paid for deliveries. They aren't employees currently. They don't get unemployment insurance and workman's compensation. And I think labor law is lagging in that regard, and I think it's about time that it gets aligned.
Well, thank you for that, John. Wish we had more time to continue that end of the discussion, because there is a lot to talk about that. But thanks for your time, John Botha, CEO of Global Business Solutions, just speaking to us about the impact of protest action on companies and, of course, labor laws and labor rights in tandem.